Let freedom ring this afternoon at 2 with Sean Hannity. Right before Joe Walsh at 5 on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. A lot of things happening at the federal level. Guns, tariffs, sanctuary state, city policies, not to mention all of the geopolitical concerns. And to help us distill all of those issues, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Peter Roskam, congressman from Illinois 6, out there in the western burbs. Peter, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Hey, guys. Good morning. Good to be with you.
So Speaker Ryan put a bit of a wet blanket on Trump's proposed tariffs, 25% on foreign steel, 10% on foreign aluminum. This bit of a division between some of those with more protectionist instincts like the president and those that are more free traders like Paul Ryan, and I'm guessing probably you. So how is that going to flesh itself out? Because Congress can reel the president back in on this issue if they want to.
Yeah, Congress can. Of course, it would, the irony is in order to do that, it would take the president to sign, the law that Congress would pass. So there's less here to do than meets the eye. I think this is a real challenge and a real problem. The notion of raising taxes, and that's what tariffs are, on American businesses and American consumers is something that is we shouldn't go this route. And while trade deals in some cases need to be renegotiated and to come to the table and to push for a better NAFTA deal, for example, is very significant. But locally, here's the impact. We've got a lot of small manufacturers and small businesses in the 6th congressional district that are manufacturing things, and they've got to import this steel. And to raise these tariffs on them is counterintuitive. It's not helpful, and it will have a negative impact on growth. So I think the much smarter move is to move away from this.
What is there a middle ground where you could exempt countries like Canada and Mexico and focus in on countries like Turkey and China?
Yeah, you could, I think, and I think the White House is signaling a willingness to exempt Canada and Mexico, which is a good thing. And look, here in the great scheme of things, this could be, posturing and negotiation driving and positioning and so forth. So I don't discount that, as the ability of the president to drive the debate, and he certainly got everybody's attention. And I think that when it all comes down to it, my hope is that cooler heads prevail and we don't get into a trade war where everybody's a loser.
And there seems to be some confusion in the White House over the tariff rollout. He was supposed to present something today. Now that's been put on hold. And we know that 100 congressional members sent President Trump saying a letter pretty much saying, don't do this. Were you one of those who signed that letter?
Yeah, I was one of those that signed the letter. And it could be that there's confusion. It could be that they're pausing and reconsidering based on this wide range of people that they're hearing from. And the departure of Gary Cohn, who was chairman of the national, the advisory group, the economic advisors in the White House, could be a signal to the president that this is a very serious thing. And here's the irony. We have so much growth that we've currently experienced and that we're poised on for more that came from cutting taxes, that came from the regulatory rollback. There's a lot of people that are urging caution here, saying if you go this tariff route, you're going to put a lot of speed bumps on this economic growth, and that's not what we want to see happen.
Well, and that's the point that Mark Perry made in an op-ed in the Washington Examiner, Mark Perry is an economist at the University of Michigan. He talked about the energy sector in particular, which has been one of the drivers of growth and dynamism in the economy, and that the tariffs have the possibility of raising the cost of the production of oil and natural gas, which we're exporting around the globe to the benefit of the domestic economy, and that means raising energy costs for both American firms and households, and that would not be good.
Yeah, and you look at autos that use a lot of steel. You look at I keep going back, in and through my constituents. You guys know my district well, and you just drive around, and there's all these small companies that are manufacturing things, and steel is a key component of this, and these metals that they need for it, and it is simply not available here, and we've got to make sure that their prices don't go up. So we're at a pretty tumultuous time right now in terms of this trade policy, and I think and hope cooler heads can prevail, but it remains to be seen.
Jeff Sessions, he's the Attorney General, He was in California yesterday, and he delivered a rather stark message to Governor Moonbeam and the Oakland mayor in particular. Listen to what he had to say to Mayor Schaaf.
So here's my message to Mayor Schaaf. How dare you? How dare you needlessly endanger the lives of our law enforcement officers to promote a radical open borders agenda? But in California, we have bigger problems also, more than just one mayor.
Well, we have those same problems in Illinois, I would argue. And so are you doing what you can to maybe have Jeff Sessions come to Chicago or to the suburbs and deliver the same message directed at both Tiny Dancer, the mayor of Chicago, as well as Bruce Rauner, the governor of the state of Illinois, who supports state policies?
It's a fair point. This notion of sanctuary states is not a helpful thing, and Sessions framed it up well in terms of telegraphing, just putting law enforcement in danger, and law enforcement is under so much pressure right now, as we know, and they are really at risk. That it's a foolish thing to put them in danger unnecessarily. I would also, be remiss if I didn't point out Attorney General Sessions has an opportunity to do the right thing vis-a-vis Lois Lerner, who the three of us have talked about a lot, the person who was involved in the scandal of targeting conservatives, and the Justice Department. And Sessions, as head of the Justice Department, has done nothing, to my knowledge, to pursue that case. And I think it is not appropriate that they just completely walk away from that.
And how bewildered were you personally, just not as a politician, but as a resident of Illinois, when you found out and realized that Governor Rauner signed us as a sanctuary state?
Yeah, that I don't know if there was much foreshadowing of that, from a policy point of view, but it really just puts us at odds with the larger discussion. And that's not to say that you can't drive a discussion and come to some common ground in terms of figuring out this immigration conundrum that we have, but becoming a sanctuary state to basically say we're going to thumb our nose at federal law and we're going to ask for federal money is pretty ridiculous in my view.
The New York Times this week admitted that they this is a more direct version than they copped to, but what they did is they concocted these profiles of people that would be hurt by the Trump tax cuts, and then they said, oh, well, yeah, those profiles actually would have been helped by the Trump tax cuts, so we admit that we, were promulgating propaganda. How much has the change in public opinion as people are experiencing the tax cuts and getting a better understanding of them and now favor them, how much do you think that really buoys Republican spirits and prospects for the politics of it, which is to retain the House in November?
Yeah, it helps a lot. And I think there's a couple things going on. One, the Democrats completely overplayed their hand, and they were just hyperbolic in their criticism of this effort. When you describe this as Armageddon, the worst bill ever, and $1,000 you just describe as crumbs, as Nancy Pelosi said, it's just out of step, and people can't relate to that. I'll just give you an anecdote. I was up in Crystal Lake a couple of weeks ago at the Chamber of Commerce. They had an expo in one of the school gyms. I was just walking around and talking to a guy who was involved in home remodeling, is my recollection. And I said, tell me about the tax cuts and the impact it's had on you. And he said, look, our prices are coming down because our suppliers are discounting our supplies based on the tax cuts. I'm up at West Dundee, and a guy comes up to me. I'm at City Hall. We're honoring the local Lions Club. And the guy comes up to me and just out of the blue, just comes up and he goes, kind of pulled me aside. He goes, thank you for the tax help. I really appreciate it. So I think this is one of these bills, the more people see it, the more they learn about it, the more comfortable they are, and the more they realize, oh, this is good stuff. And I was told this was going to be a disaster for me. Good stuff.
Speaking of demagoguery, how concerned are you, particularly in a suburban district, that you're going to get the left, the Democrats are going to do guns as a big issue in this campaign cycle and suggest that every Republican is bought and paid for by the NRA, wants to put a gun turret on top of everybody's home, and all the other silliness that you get on this issue from the left if they think they can scare suburban voters.
Yeah, I think that you can see this playbook coming. It's come before, it will come again, and it's like catnip for the left. They cannot resist. They go right to the politics of firearms as opposed to trying to think through good policy. And I think the smarter thing for us to be doing as a culture right now is to be asking two questions. Number one, how is it possible that we have some people who are so isolated and so lonely and so enraged that they reach out and they do what they've done in terms of mass murder? That's the deeper question we need to answer. And the other thing is, and I'm working through this now, how do we create a mechanism that's constitutional and gives due process, but by which, where there are red flags, that it's a clear indication and you see the trajectory in terms of social media and statements and so forth, and everybody scratches their heads and say, how come something wasn't possible where there was no intervention? How do we up that safety valve to make sure that we have the capacity to intervene? And I think that there's some smart, thoughtful things that we can do that can reach a balance there. But the demagoguery is coming. The demagoguery is here, and it's just, I think, a current state of being in this national debate we've had.
He is Peter Roskam, Congressman from Illinois 6th out in the Western Burbs. Peter, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You've made the switch.